She looked him dead in the eyes and said she was going to let him have that night.
You know, there's a specific kind of silence that settles into a house when a marriage is dying. It's not a peaceful silence. It's heavy. It's thick with the things you aren't saying, the suspicions you're choking back, and the cold realization that the person sleeping 3 inches away from you is a complete stranger. My name is Winston Blair. At 42, I thought I'd finally built the kind of empire a man can be proud of. I own 3 Papa Giovanni's locations across suburban Dallas. They aren't just pizza shops. They're my sweat, my late nights, and my legacy. I had a wife of 6 years, Rachel, and our 3-year-old twins, Emma and Ethan. And then there was Sebastian. Sebastian is my eldest, my son from my first relationship with Sandra. He was a senior at Texas A&M, a kid who worked twice as hard as I ever did. I'd spent my life making sure he had the opportunities I didn't. But about 3 months ago, during his spring break visit, the air in our house changed. Rachel had always been a bit distant with him, but this time, it was poison. I remember the night clearly. The twins were tucked in, and I was sitting at the kitchen island, buried in sales reports. Rachel walked in, her arms crossed, her eyes like chips of blue ice. "Winston, we need to talk about Sebastian's college expenses," she said. I didn't even look up. "What about them? They're paid for. I've got it under control." "That's the problem," she snapped. "Do you realize how much money you're throwing at him? Money that should be going toward Emma and Ethan's future, toward our real family." The words real family hit me like a physical blow. I felt the air leave my lungs. I looked up at her, and for the first time, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt toward my wife in 6 years. Repulsion. Sebastian is as real as it gets. "Rachel," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "He's my firstborn. I supported him before I knew you existed, and I'll support him until the day I die." She didn't argue. She just rolled her eyes, muttered something about my distorted priorities, and walked away. I watched her go, noticing for the first time the way she clutched her phone, the way she checked it every 30 seconds, the way she'd smile at a screen while she looked at me with nothing but contempt. I didn't say a word. I just watched. I'm a businessman. In my line of work, you don't react to a problem until you've audited the books. And boy, were the books about to get ugly. Over the next few weeks, the red flags started popping up like weeds. Rachel was at the gym for 4 hours at a time. She was shopping but coming home empty-handed. Then, the hammer dropped. Sandra, my ex, called me. She was frantic. Sebastian's final tuition payment for the semester had been declined. I went cold. I'd earmarked that money months ago. I logged into our joint accounts, and my heart nearly stopped. 3 large withdrawals, $15,000, vanished. When I confronted Rachel that night, I expected a lie. I expected her to say we'd been hacked. Instead, she sat on the edge of the bed, buffing her nails, looking bored. "I moved it to a private savings account," she said casually. "We need to prioritize the twins. Sebastian can get a loan. He's an adult." I stood there, staring at this woman I'd shared a bed with for 6 years. She'd stolen from my son. She'd sabotaged his future to prioritize children who were still in diapers. That money was for his tuition. "Rachel," I said, my voice shaking with a rage I was struggling to contain. "Consider it a management decision," she replied with an infuriating calm. "The conversation is over, Winston." I walked out of the room before I did something I'd regret. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I just realized that the woman I loved was gone, and in her place was a predator. I knew right then that I wasn't just dealing with a cold wife. I was dealing with a threat to my children, all of them. But I had no idea that the theft was just the tip of the iceberg. I had no idea she was already halfway out the door. Last Wednesday started like any other day. I was at the Garland location, dealing with a broken industrial oven and a late flour shipment. By the time I got home, I was exhausted. I just wanted to see the twins, have a quiet drink, and try to figure out how I was going to replace that $15,000. The house was quiet. Emma and Ethan were asleep. I was on the couch, half watching a crime show. When Rachel walked into the living room, I froze. She wasn't in her pajamas. She was in a black silk dress, the kind that cost more than my first car. Her hair was a perfect wave. Her makeup was flawless. And she smelled of an expensive perfume I'd never bought for her. She was holding her car keys, and she looked like she was heading to a gala. "I'm going out tonight," she said. Her voice was rehearsed, flat. "Out where?" I asked, muting the TV. "It's 9:15 on a Wednesday. The twins have daycare in the morning." She shifted her weight. I've known Rachel for a long time. That little shift, that was her tell. She was about to lie, and she didn't even care if I believed it. "Just meeting some friends for drinks? I'll probably crash at Lisa's place since it's so late." "Lisa?" I asked. "The Lisa who lives in Arlington? You haven't spoken to her in a year." Rachel's jaw tightened. "It doesn't matter. I'm tired of being cooped up here, Winston. I'm going out." I stood up. My gut was screaming. This wasn't a girl's night. This was a departure. "Rachel, what's really happening here?" She paused at the door. She turned and looked at me with a look I will never forget. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't shame. It was a cold, clinical indifference, like she was looking at a piece of furniture she was tired of seeing in the hallway. "Look, Winston," she said, her voice chillingly steady. "I need to stay the night with someone tonight. I'll be back tomorrow afternoon to help with the twins." The air in the room seemed to solidify. I stared at her, certain I'd misheard. You need to stay the night with someone?" "You heard me," she said. "With who?" "Rachel, are you telling me you're going to another man's bed right now?" She didn't flinch. She didn't even have the decency to look away. "Does it really matter? This is just how things are now. I'll see you tomorrow." And just like that, she walked out. The front door closed with a soft, final click. I stood in the center of our living room, staring at the wood grain of the door. I waited for her to come back. I waited for her to burst in and say it was a sick joke, that she was just angry about the Sebastian argument and wanted to hurt me, but the driveway stayed silent. The taillights of her SUV faded into the Dallas night. She'd left her 3-year-old children and her husband of 6 years to go sleep with someone else. And she'd announced it like she was telling me she was out of milk. I sank back onto the couch. My hands were shaking. I looked at the family photos on the mantle, the trip to Disney, the twins' first birthday. They looked like props from a movie I'd walked out of. I let her go. I didn't chase her. I didn't call her cell phone 100 times. I just sat there in the dark, my mind clicking into a gear I didn't know I had. If she wanted to play this game, fine. But Rachel had forgotten one thing. I'm an independent business owner in the state of Texas. I didn't build 3 restaurants by being a pushover. I built them by knowing when a partnership was no longer profitable. I picked up the phone and called my brother, Kevin. "Winston, it's late, man. Everything okay?" "No," I said, my voice sounding like it was coming from a mile away. "Rachel just left. She told me she's staying with someone else tonight." There was a long silence. "Are you serious?" "I need a name." "Kevin. You mentioned that guy you used for the warehouse theft, the private investigator? Frank Patterson?" Kevin's voice dropped. "Yeah, he's the best. But Winston, once you go down that road..." "She's already gone down the road, Kevin," I said. "I'm just the one who's going to make sure the bridge is out when she tries to come back." I spent the rest of that night in the twins' room, sitting in the rocking chair, watching them breathe. I felt a fierce, protective heat rising in my chest. She thought she could steal Sebastian's tuition, flaunt an affair, and still keep her hands on my kids and my business. I just smiled. She had no idea what was coming. I let her dig her own grave. I was just going to be the one to provide the shovel. The next morning, the good husband Winston Blair was dead. The businessman was in charge now. After dropping the twins at daycare, acting perfectly normal, smiling at the teachers while my soul felt like it was made of broken glass, I drove straight to an unassuming office building in North Dallas. Frank Patterson didn't look like a PI from the movies. He looked like a retired gym teacher. He was thick-necked, wore a faded polo shirt, and had eyes that looked like they'd seen every sin the city had to offer. Your brother says you're in a bad spot, Frank said, sliding a cup of lukewarm coffee across the desk. I told him everything. The $15,000, the staying with someone announcement, the black dress, the cold eyes. Frank took notes on a yellow legal pad, his face expressionless. Here's the deal, Mr. Blair, Frank said when I finished. If she's being this brazen, she's either incredibly stupid or she's got a plan. Usually, when a spouse tells you they're cheating to your face, they're trying to goad you into a reaction. They want you to yell, hit something, or kick them out so they can claim you're abusive or unstable in court. I leaned back. I didn't yell. I didn't even raise my voice. Frank nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. Good. Keep it that way. You be the boring, stable father. Let me be the shadow. I paid him $2,000 on the spot. I want everything. I said, I want the name. I want the address. I want the bank records. I'll start with the financial audit, Frank said. Money usually leaves a bigger trail than love does. I went to my Plano location and tried to work, but I was just going through the motions. That evening, Rachel came home at 6 p.m. She walked through the door like she'd just been at the grocery store. She kissed the twins, started making pasta, and asked me if I'd remembered to call the plumber about the sink. I watched her from the kitchen doorway. She was humming. How was your night? I asked, my voice terrifyingly neutral. She didn't even turn around. Fine. Lisa and I had a long talk. I needed the sleep. Lisa, I repeated. Funny. I called Lisa's husband this morning. He said Lisa was in Austin, visiting her mother all week. The chopping stopped. Rachel turned around, her face hardening. The mask slipped for just a second, revealing the predator underneath. Winston, don't start. I told you I needed space. If you're going to be paranoid and check up on me, it's just going to make this transition harder. Transition, I asked. What transition, Rachel? For our lives, she said, her voice dropping into a patronizing tone. We're adults. We've grown apart. That's all. I didn't argue. I didn't tell her I knew about the tuition. I just nodded. I see. That night, while she was sleeping, probably texting him under the covers, I went into my home office and started my own audit. Frank was right. Money leaves a trail. I found a credit card statement tucked into the bottom of a drawer, inside an old tax folder. It wasn't a joint card. It was in Rachel's name only. I looked at the charges. Expensive dinners at the Fairmont, boutique hotels in Uptown, and then a charge that made my blood run cold. A $5,000 deposit to a high-end moving and storage company. She wasn't just having an affair. She was packing. I photographed every page of the statement. My hands were steady now. The shock had been replaced by a cold, surgical precision. The next morning, Frank called. Winston, you need to come to the office. I've got him. I met Frank an hour later. He spread a manila folder across the desk. His name is Devin Walsh, 34. Commercial real estate. He's got a condo in Addison and a BMW he can barely afford. But here's the kicker. Winston. Frank slid a photo across the desk. It was Rachel and Devin at a patio bar. They were laughing, their hands entwined. He's married, Frank said. Wife, 2 kids. And from what I can tell, he's been through 2 divorces already. Guy's a professional. He targets women with assets. Assets, I whispered. Like my restaurants. Exactly. Frank said, I tracked your wife's shopping trips. She's been meeting him 3 times a week for 5 months. But there's something else. I did a deep dive into that private account she moved your son's tuition into. Frank looked at me with genuine pity. Winston, she's been transferring money from that account into a joint account with Devin Walsh. They've been pooling funds for 3 months. She's not just leaving you. She's been funding his lifestyle with your son's future. I stared at the bank statements, my pizza shops, my flour, my sauce, my 60-hour work weeks. It was all being funneled into a condo in Addison so Rachel could play house with a real estate con man. I want her gone. Frank, I said, but I want her to leave with nothing. Then we need the admission, Frank said. Tonight, you confront her. But Winston, you record every single second. In Texas, we're a one-party consent state. You just have to be the one who knows the tape is rolling. I took the folder and walked out. I had 5 months of lies in my hand. I had the name of the man who was sleeping in my wife's bed. And most importantly, I had a plan that would make Rachel wish she'd never even heard the name Devin Walsh. Confrontation is an art form. Most men do it with heat. They do it with shouting and accusations. But I've learned that the most effective way to break someone is with a cold, quiet delivery of the facts. I waited until the twins were asleep. I sat in the living room, the lights dimmed, waiting for Rachel to come home from her late meeting. She walked in at 10:30 p.m., looking radiant. She started toward the stairs, but I cleared my throat. "Sit down." "Rachel, we need to talk," she huffed, rolling her eyes. "Winston, I'm exhausted. Can this wait?" "No," I said. "It really can't." I placed the manila folder on the coffee table. I didn't say a word. I just waited. Rachel looked at the folder, then at me. She sat on the edge of the armchair, her posture defensive. She opened the folder and slowly began to flip through the pages. The photos of her and Devin, the secret credit card statements, the joint account with Devin's name next to hers. For a moment, there was silence. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. I could hear the clock on the wall. I saw the blood drain from Rachel's face. But then something strange happened. She didn't cry. She didn't beg for forgiveness. She just looked up at me with a smirk, a cold, arrogant smirk. "So you hired a spy," she said. "That's how much you trust me?" This is why I had to find someone else. "Winston, you're obsessed with control." "Control?" I asked, my phone in my pocket, the recording app capturing every syllable. "Rachel, you stole $15,000 from Sebastian's tuition to fund a lifestyle for a married man in Addison. You've been taking marital funds to pay for hotel rooms while I was at work." "I didn't steal it," she snapped. "I redistributed it. I'm the mother of your children. I deserve to be happy. Devin makes me feel alive. He doesn't treat me like a business partner. He treats me like a woman. He's married, Rachel. He has 2 kids. He's a con man who's been divorced twice. Did he tell you that? He told me everything. She lied. He told me how jealous his ex-wife was. Just like you. He's leaving her for me. We're moving to Colorado next month, and I'm taking Emma and Ethan with me." The rage flared in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. My PI's advice echoed in my head. Stay the boring, stable father. "You're not taking the twins anywhere, Rachel. Try to stop me," she said, leaning forward. "Devin's lawyer says we have a slam dunk case. You're a workaholic who's never home. You're obsessed with your first family and your restaurants. I'm the primary caregiver. I'll get the house. I'll get half the business. And I'll get full custody." "And the $15,000? I asked. "You admit you took that money for Devin?" "Yes," she shouted. "And I'd do it again. I deserve that money. I've put in 6 years of labor in this marriage. And I'm taking what's mine. I don't regret a single second of it. Being with him is the only real thing I've felt in years." "So, the affair has been going on for 5 months?" 5 beautiful months, she said, standing up. "Now, if you're done with your little investigation, I'm going to bed. I have a lot of packing to do." She walked upstairs, her heels clicking on the hardwood. I sat in the dark for a long time after she left. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and stopped the recording. I had it. I had the admission of the affair. I had the admission of the financial fraud. I had her statement that she planned to take my children out of state. I didn't say a word as I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. I just smiled. Rachel thought she was the one with the plan. She thought she was the one holding the cards. She had no idea that I was about to play a hand that would leave her with nothing but the clothes on her back. The next morning was a blur of calculated aggression. I was at my lawyer's office before the sun was fully up. Mark Thompson had been my corporate attorney for a decade, but he specialized in high-asset divorces. I laid out the folder, the photos, and most importantly, I played the recording. Mark listened to Rachel's voice, the coldness, the admission of the theft, the plan to move to Colorado. He leaned back in his chair and let out a long whistle. "Winston, in 15 years of practice, I've rarely seen a spouse hand over a case this cleanly." Mark said, "She admitted to financial waste of marital assets. She admitted to the affair, and she documented her intent to commit parental alienation by moving the kids out of state. What's the move? I asked. We strike first. We don't wait for her to file. We file for divorce today on grounds of adultery and cruelty. We file an emergency ex parte order for temporary full custody of the twins and a temporary restraining order to freeze all marital accounts. Do it, I said. And there's one more thing, Mark said with a predatory grin. Devin Walsh's wife, I know her lawyer. I think it's only fair that she receives a copy of Frank's folder, don't you? Absolutely, I said. By noon, the paperwork was filed. By 2 p.m., a sheriff's deputy was dispatched to my house. I arrived home just as the cruiser pulled into the driveway. Rachel was in the garage, surrounded by half-packed boxes. She looked up, her eyes wide with confusion. Winston, what is this? I didn't say a word. I just stood by my car and watched. The deputy stepped out, holding a stack of papers. Rachel Blair, you're being served with a petition for divorce and an emergency order for temporary custody. You have 1 hour to pack a bag of personal belongings. You are required to vacate the premises immediately. Rachel's face went through a terrifying transformation. Confusion turned to shock, then to a screeching primal rage. You can't do this. This is my house. Where are the twins? The twins are in a safe location with my brother, I said, my voice as cold as a Dallas winter. And the house is marital property. But under the emergency order, I have temporary exclusive possession. You have 1 hour. Rachel, the deputy will supervise you. Winston, you bastard, you can't take my children. I'm not taking them, I said. I'm protecting them from a woman who steals from her family to fund a con man. Oh. And Rachel, don't bother calling your bank. The accounts are frozen. The credit card you've been using, canceled. She stood in the garage, her hands shaking, her expensive black dress suddenly looking very out of place. She looked at the deputy, then at me. Devin will help me, she spat. He'll hire a better lawyer than yours. He'll take care of me. I wouldn't count on that, I said. Mark just sent the Fairmont photos to Devin's wife. My guess is he's currently having a very interesting conversation of his own. I watched as the woman who had smirked at me 12 hours ago began to crumble. She spent the next hour throwing clothes into a suitcase, while the deputy watched her every move. She tried to call Devin 6 times. He didn't pick up once. I let her dig her own grave. She'd spent 5 months building a fantasy life, and it had taken exactly 4 hours for it to come crashing down. As she walked to her SUV, suitcase in hand, she stopped and looked at me. The arrogance was gone. There was just a raw, desperate fear. Winston, please, let's talk about this. I was just upset. I didn't mean what I said about Sebastian. You meant every word. Rachel, I said, and so did I. Goodbye. I watched her pull out of the driveway. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel relief. I just felt a quiet, grim satisfaction. The audit was over. The bad debt had been cleared. Now, it was time to rebuild. The following week was the glow-up, not for me, but for the truth. Rachel had spent 5 months crafting a narrative. She'd told her friends I was a workaholic who didn't care about my family. She'd told Devin she was a trapped bird ready to fly. But once the legal machinery started grinding, the narrative fell apart. Devin Walsh was the first domino. As it turns out, Devin's wife, a sharp-as-nails woman named Chloe, wasn't about to play the victim. The moment she saw the Fairmont photos and the joint account statements Frank had provided, she filed for divorce. And since Devin's real estate business was largely funded by Chloe's family, he was suddenly in a world of hurt. He didn't just dump Rachel, he disappeared. He blocked her number, moved out of the Addison condo, and left her to deal with the fallout alone. Rachel was living in a cheap motel on the outskirts of town. She was broke. Her secret credit cards were maxed out, and she had no one to turn to. Her friends, the daycare moms she'd lied to, vanished the moment they heard about the theft of Sebastian's tuition. Then came the meeting. Rachel's lawyer, a harried public defender type she'd scraped together the money for, called Mark. They wanted to negotiate. We met in a small conference room downtown. Rachel looked terrible. Her hair was unwashed. Her clothes were wrinkled. and the black silk dress was nowhere to be seen. "My client is prepared to discuss a settlement," her lawyer said, avoiding my eyes. "There's nothing to negotiate," Mark said, sliding a document across the table. "We have the recording, we have the PI's report, we have the bank record showing $15,000 stolen from a designated education fund. We're moving for an 80-20 split of assets in Winston's favor due to financial waste and adultery." 80-20? Rachel whispered. "Winston, I helped build those restaurants. You helped spend the profits on Devin Walsh," I said. "And custody?" her lawyer asked. "Supervised visitation," I said. "Every other Saturday. 4 hours. At a state-monitored facility. Until Rachel completes a court-ordered psychological evaluation and parenting classes." Rachel burst into tears. Real tears this time. Not the manipulative ones she'd used for years. "You're destroying me," she sobbed. "No, Rachel," I said, leaning forward. "You destroyed yourself. I just gave you the space you asked for. How does it feel? Is this the life you were looking for?" She couldn't answer. She just sat there, shaking. That afternoon, I called Sebastian. "The tuition is back in your account, son," I said, "plus interest. I'm sorry you had to go through that." "It's okay, Dad," Sebastian said. "I'm just glad the truth is out. How are the twins?" "They're great," I said. "They're asking for their big brother. I'll be home this weekend," he promised. I hung up and looked out the window at the Dallas skyline. For the first time in years, the air in my lungs felt clean. My restaurants were thriving. I'd just signed the lease for a 4th location. My son was safe. My twins were happy. I let her dig her own grave. She'd wanted a different life, and I'd made sure she got exactly what she deserved. But the best part was yet to come, because while Rachel was losing everything, I was about to find something I'd lost a long time ago. Life has a funny way of coming full circle if you let it. During the chaos of the divorce, Sebastian's mother, Sandra, had been my rock. We'd had our issues in the past, mostly due to Rachel's interference. But now that the poison was gone, we found a new rhythm. Sandra started coming over on the weekends when Sebastian was home. We'd have big family dinners, just like I'd always dreamed of. Emma and Ethan adored her. She was a mother figure who actually wanted to be there, who didn't see them as competitors for a bank account. One evening, as the twins were playing in the backyard and Sebastian was showing me his latest architecture project, Sandra leaned against the porch railing. "You look different, Winston," she said. "Lighter. I feel like I finally got the poison out of the system." I said, "You did the right thing, protecting Sebastian. That meant everything to me. I know it wasn't easy. It was the only choice," I said. A month later, the divorce was finalized. Rachel took the 20% settlement, which barely covered her legal fees and her debts. She was working a retail job at a mall, living in a studio apartment. She saw the twins twice a month, and from what the monitors told me, she spent most of the time crying. She'd wanted to be a woman instead of a mother. Now, she was just a stranger with a supervised visitation schedule. I, on the other hand, was leveling up. I opened my 4th Papa Giovanni's in Frisco. It was an instant success. I was being featured in local business magazines as the Pizza King of Dallas. I bought a new house, a place that had never known Rachel's footsteps. It had a big backyard, a pool, and enough room for Sebastian to have his own wing. One afternoon, I was at the new location, overseeing the grand opening, when a woman walked in. She was older, polished, and looked incredibly familiar. It was Devin Walsh's ex-wife, Chloe. "Mr. Blair," she said, extending a hand. "I'm Chloe Walsh, or I will be again soon." "Nice to meet you," I said, surprised. "I wanted to thank you personally. That manila folder? It didn't just save your life. It saved mine. I'd been suspecting him for years, but I never had the proof to bypass our prenup. Because of your PI's work, I'm walking away with the business and the house. I'm glad it worked out for both of us," I said. "Karma is a dish best served with evidence," she said with a wink. I realized then that the revenge wasn't just about hurting Rachel. It was about balance. It was about making sure that the people who build things, who work, who love, who provide, are protected from the ones who just want to take I invited Sandra to the grand opening that night. We stood in the center of the new restaurant, surrounded by the smell of wood-fired dough and the laughter of happy customers. Sebastian was at the bar, talking to a girl he'd met at school. Emma and Ethan were helping the dough rollers. I felt a deep, resonant peace. Rachel had thought she was destroying me. She thought she was taking my life and my children. She had no idea that she was actually doing me the biggest favor in the world. She was removing herself from a family she never deserved to be a part of. I just smiled. I didn't say a word to the world about how I'd won. I didn't need to. The results were on the plate. 2 years later, I was sitting in my home office, reviewing the plans for a 5th restaurant in Oklahoma. The business was a machine now. I had a management team I trusted, allowing me to do something I hadn't done enough of during my marriage to Rachel. I was home for dinner every single night. Sandra and I had been married for 6 months. It wasn't a gala wedding. It was a backyard ceremony with just the kids and a few friends. It was perfect. My phone buzzed, a number I hadn't seen in a long time. Rachel. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Winston? Her voice was thin, brittle. What do you need, Rachel? I just wanted to apologize. Truly apologize. I've been in therapy for a year. I realize now how much I let my own insecurities and Devin's lies cloud my judgment. I lost everything. I lost my children. I lost you. I leaned back in my chair. You didn't lose us, Rachel. You discarded us. There's a difference. I know, she sobbed. I'm living in a basement apartment. I'm struggling every day. I see the photos of you and Sandra and the twins on social media. You look so happy. It should have been me. No, I said, my voice firm. It couldn't have been you, because you didn't value the work. You wanted the reward without the loyalty. I hope you find peace. Rachel. But don't call this number again. Our communication goes through the visitation monitor. Goodbye. I hung up. I didn't feel a sting of guilt. I didn't feel a rush of anger. She was just a ghost from a previous life. A bug in the code that had finally been deleted. I walked down the hall to the twins' room. Emma and Ethan were 6 now. They were bright, funny, and fiercely loved. Sebastian was there, too, home for the summer, after his first year of grad school. He was tucked in between them, on the bed, reading a book. Daddy, Emma chirped, Sebastian is telling us the story about the Pizza King. Is he now? I laughed, sitting on the edge of the bed. Tell us the part about how you saved the family. Daddy, Ethan said, his eyes heavy with sleep. I looked at Sebastian, who gave me a knowing nod. I looked at the 3 of them, my real family. Well, I said, pulling the blankets up, once upon a time, there was a man who worked very hard, and someone tried to take what he built. They tried to take the love and the laughter, but the man didn't fight with his fists. He fought with the truth, and because he was patient, and because he loved his children more than anything, the truth won. And the bad people? Emma asked. They went away, I said, and the family grew bigger and stronger than it ever was before. I kissed them all goodnight and walked out into the hallway. Sandra was waiting there, a glass of wine in her hand and a smile on her face. You're a hero, Winston Blair, she whispered. No, I said, taking her hand. I'm just a guy who finally understood the value of his own life, and I wasn't going to let anyone steal it. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't defeating your enemies. It's building something so beautiful that they become irrelevant. Rachel had wanted to stay the night with someone else. I'd let her, and in doing so, I'd found the person I was always meant to be. I'm Winston Blair, and my life has never been more real.